As you can see, I have the code on screen, so that's some indication of what today's going to be like. We have some coding to do. As with yesterday, I'm going to be continuing to work on the fire ants. And yesterday we left after doing one of the two different subtypes of the fire ants. So we did the one where they get a bonus to their they get a bonus for 5 minutes after being hatched. So you want to use them quickly. Now we're going to be doing off stream yesterday. I actually did the type where you get you get the free hatch if the egg's been on the tile for a minute. You can see that on screen now. Actually, the free hatch time. So that's built into the tiles now. The next thing that we're working on, and this is what I'm going to be doing today, is the level 3 tiles. Now, level 3 tiles are supposed to be in fire ants are meant to give you an additional ant. So you get a whole extra ant at level 3. That's for both types. So the tiles have to be able to produce multiple ants. I was having a think this morning, and they're not going to be able to receive multiple eggs. So you'll have to hatch one ant, then a new egg will be brought to the tile and hatch the second. But it does mean that you can have 2 ants alive at the same time from the same tile. Now, I was looking at ways to approach this, and there's the general versus the specific. So you can have it so that we just build in stuff to have 1 extra tenant on the tile. Or we could build it so you can just generally make the tile have multiple extra tenants. And that might be useful further down the line. In the end, it looks like, after discussing it with team members, we've decided to do a more general approach. So that will be to have an array of tenants and a number of tenants. So I've already started implementing it here. So count alive tenants is less than the number of tenants. Then we do something. So that's our starting point today. This could take all day and possibly longer, because it's going to require a bit of a relook at each section of the hatching code. But hopefully by the end of it, we should have a nice, neat system which doesn't have one scenario or the other. It's just dealing with all the scenarios within itself. Okay, so I created this function just like a couple of minutes ago to count how many tenants are alive from the tile. This is how many tenants the tile can have. So that'll be set on a per tile base, and that'll be set when the tile hits level 3. It'll be flagged. Also, as I'm doing this, I'm changing core systems in the game. So I'm going to have to think about how they are going to be saved in free play and in your Formicarium. So there's all these kind of little bits and bobs that need to be considered with this system. And considering we're actually changing a fundamental system in the game, we're going to have to put some thought into how it's going to interact with other systems. Okay, that aside, this is what I was looking at a while ago. Okay, so this is to do with the minims. The subtenant thing is still going to exist. I'm not going to touch that because that's how minims work. They work on this subtenant system. What we're doing is actually having extra main tenants. So this will create a job if there is a tenant but no egg. Right, so this is looking at the singular tenant. This is the situation where there's a tenant on the tile but no egg. It's returning here. Now, I'm not convinced this should be doing this. This might actually be causing some minor problems in the game at the minute, because I was looking at that and thinking, why wouldn't it go on to try and hatch stuff in this situation? I mean, it's saying there's a tenant, but it's not. It's saying there's no egg. Where's the egg check? So here I see a tenant check. I see another tenant check. So pretty much the same check. Then another check done on the tenant. And then it creates jobs. So there doesn't appear to be any egg check in there, which I am not happy about. However, there is a check. There is a check within create job. I know that's true. So that'll be why that one's working. Right, Daniel Sly and Pactane, good to have you both back with us. How are you two doing today? My coffee cup's leaking. Great when you pour coffee down yourself after trying to drink. I'm just going to take the lid off. I like the lid being on because it's much less risky of me knocking the coffee over on the desk. But it's just going to pour itself down my front anyway. Okay. So that'll be why that's working at the moment, because I know inside create a job there is actually a check to see if there's an egg on the tile. However, essentially these three checks are all handled by this. So this starts with if there is a tenant. So we'll create a job if the number of tenants is max, but no egg on tile. What's the true stand for? The true is that it has tenant. Okay, so this is something else we're going to have to look at then. So it's considering a situation inside of this. First time I'm seeing a screen in the middle of a class. Risky, very risky. If anyone asks, I did not endorse this. I remember my university days, and sometimes I couldn't follow what was going on anyway, so I just felt like I was there just for the sake of having the attendance mark. Because I couldn't concentrate, I had to learn it all in my own time. Fun times. Anyway, okay, so I'm going to look at this because the fact that we're having a has tenant being passed in there is interesting. I mean, why does the brood job care if it has a tenant? Right. It's a job priority thing. So it looks like that's the only reason for it. So essentially, what I'm going to do is change has tenant to be if the tenants are max, which is fine because that's currently what it does anyway. See, I can leave that. I can leave that as true. Okay, back up to where we were. Doesn't like that. I think this is just messing up anyway, probably because of stuff before it. Sometimes IntelliSense gets confused. I'm going to assume that this is one of those occasions. And move on. In fact, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to set it building whilst I continue work. Okay, I'm actually running the engine at the moment, so I'm going to close that down. I don't need to be running the engine at the moment because we're going to be in this code for quite some time. Okay, so this creates a is equal to is correct because it should never be above. If it's above, we've got a bug. Okay, so next, afterwards, check for incubating egg. Like I said, we're only going to have one egg incubating, despite being able to have multiple ants. So it's going to be important that you have enough workers to refill the eggs when they hatch, like doubly important. So this is the free hatching timer. I'm not going to worry about that at the moment. Okay, so this is one of the cheats. In the game. Okay, so when hatching timer is less than or equal to... Okay, I'm going to put out a search for tenant. Just so it's highlighting it as I come across it. Okay, so temp cost. Okay, it failed. So look for the error. Maybe that's meant to be a pointer. That'll be the issue. Set it building again. Now we've changed that. Hopefully that'll succeed. Okay, so this is to do with priorities. The royal chamber always hatches first. However, I added in something about the next spawn being free as part of a... Huh. But it thinks this is a variable. You property, you function. Yeah, sorry. My bad. Will their grow and hatch speed increase? I haven't actually considered that yet. We'll see how it plays out. I think at the moment it's 12 seconds. Like when an egg's put on a tile, it's given a 12-second timer to hatch. So it's not that bad as it stands. Something to think about there. Okay, so next, this is looking up the cost of it all. Yeah, it's fine. So that doesn't matter because we're not actually looking at anything to do specifically with the tenant here. Temp free hatch. I think that's to do with I think the free hatch is to do with the hero worker, so I'm not going to worry about that. Next spawn is free. Is actually to do with a few bits and bobs, but I've used it for the fire ants as well. Okay, so hatch ant. There's a tile birth announcement. Let me just check that we haven't yet. Seems fine. If there's no egg in incubation, this will try and create a job. Okay. Oh, it's coming up with errors now. Okay, right. For a start, be allowed shrinking is definitely wrong. I understand that. Let me just... I took it from here, but I didn't actually consider the fact that it's set earlier, but I think it's literally just set to... Yeah, it's false. So I can just replace that with false. I don't know why num's having a issue. Maybe I've got it wrong. No IntelliSense available. Sure, it's num. It's confused there as well. Okay, so I'm not going to worry about num, but I do need to worry about this apparently. See, this is what I was expecting to work. Maybe I just spelt it wrong. Yeah, it's fine. It's fine. I think that'll be fine. Alright, sorry, coming back to chat. Hi John, how's it going? Working on the fire ants, eh? Yep, I am indeed working on the fire ants. this is the 2 ants per tile thing that you can get at level 3 tile. So it's I'm essentially breaking some of the rules of the game we've had set up for a while. So it's gonna require some back end tinkering to get this working without any bugs. Imagine fire ants are like demon spawn with a trident in hell. Yes. Right. So yeah. All right. Blue Man and Jack of the Jacket. Good to have you back with us. Okay. So I think I fixed this. I'll come back down to it in a bit if I haven't. But carrying on. Okay. So. Hatch Ant is where it actually gets spawned and everything gets set. Other than that, everything else there is just... But this isn't necessarily true anymore. Count alive tenants is equal to no of tenants. So if count alive tenants is equal to the number of tenants, we'll send true in. If it's not equal to it, we'll send false in. I think that's fine. Returns there, yeah, so we don't have to bother with anything below it. Okay, so that seems fine. I need to now go into the code, although this seems completely confused at the minute. Not code, going to the engine, but at the moment it seems to be stuck. I don't seem to have the option to get out of this at the moment, so I guess we're stuck waiting. So, in the meantime, let's have a discussion about the next phase of the fire ants. Okay, so I'm going to have a look at a document and explain it to you. Okay, so some upgrade ideas. These are the Formicarium upgrade ideas. So you get your two options in the Formicarium upgrades. So the first pair of options, which you can choose one, I've got down Last Laugh, which is on death the fire ant deals a significant amount of damage to its attacker. I've got kind of suggested this could look like as they die they inject venom or something. And then Last Stand. Upon reaching 0 health, the fire ant survives for a further X seconds. So I don't know how long it would survive after death with reduced stats. So the idea is that it's being attacked, it dies. Rather than dying, it kind of just stays on 1 health for a few seconds. So it can tank a bit of damage in that time, but it's got reduced stats, so its damage has gone down, along with it's mostly just its damage goes down, so it doesn't actually deal much damage. But the idea is that it can tank damage from other ants. I've got 5 seconds per initially down here, but that might be too long. So yeah, there's 2 potentially potent options there. Yeah, unfortunately, I don't. I'm not a artist in any way, shape, or form. I've done a bit of website design in my time, but the artwork for the website design has always been passed on to Matt. He's the artist amongst us. I've tried to get him to record some of his artwork actually, but he seems reluctant to. Like him doing artwork, I think that would make a very good video, like just a sped up version of him doing either a 2D piece of artwork or a 3D model. I think people would find that really interesting. But he seems a bit reluctant to. Okay, so that was the idea for one set of it. The other concept I've got is paralysis. Reduce the target's attack speed by 30% for 2 seconds each attack. So essentially, it reduces the attack speed of the enemy. It won't stack. So basically, anything they're attacking has 30% less attack speed. And then evasive, 30% chance to take no damage when hit. So that's kind of in increasing their survivability. And paralysis is reducing the opponent's damage. So ideas that, like I say, these are just ideas at the moment. They're not completely set in stone. Okay, we've got some movement on the build finally. I know it's going to fail, but if I let it do it this time, next time round, these modules should be done anyway. So we got some ideas for how the fire ants are going to work and the different options. Nice to have you with us, Raptor. Oh. Okay, there we go. It's done. Right. Go again. So we've already solved the errors. I think we have at least. Hopefully this won't take too long. Essentially here I need to look into there's a function that's handled in blueprints called hatchant. And I need to make it use the arrays rather than just setting it equal to the tenant. I then also need to look at every place in the code where tenant is referenced and change it to look at the array of tenants. So it's going to require a bit of thought. Hopefully it won't be too many places. Right, yeah, see that built a lot quicker that time. Right, so I'm actually looking down in the code. This is just in the code itself, and seeing every place that tenant's referenced. So we have the bot multiple times in game mode, in game state. Colony creature in the egg itself, multiple times in the nursery, which is the file we're in. Okay, so it's referenced all over the place, and each one of these references is going to have to be relooked at. Well, no time like the present. Each one's going to require some thought as well, because I can't just assume anything. So this is get ant group information. So it's cycling through all the rooms. Okay, so essentially it's doing a count of ants alive and ants in combat. So there's two different things it's doing. Unfortunately, it's not just creature alive now because it can be multiple creatures. But we can look to see if one creature is alive, and if there is, we can cycle through all of them. Yeah, that should be fine. This creature, where's that come from? Okay, again, this creature assumes a single creature. Okay, so I'm going to check this out. I'm going to start work on this. So what is this? Sequence Bot Mark II data supplement. Catchy title. This is in the AI section. Oh no, it's got its own section, hasn't it? It's in the bots section. Okay. Sequence Bot Mark II data supplement. Okay, so it's first of all saying if there's a tenant, do that. What I'm saying is it's count, isn't it? If count alive tenants is greater than 0. Okay, so really what we want here. Maybe I need something to get alive tenants. Okay, I'm going to go back into nursery representation and do a new function called get alive tenants. Get alive tenants. There we are. it's gonna be quite similar to counter live tenants actually. Only slightly different. So we're not adding to account, but we are going to do a check to see if it's valid or not. And then we're going to return after the for loop. We're going to run the check here. See what's valid, and then we're going to return the array afterwards. So rather than having an else, I don't need the else because I'm not doing anything if the tenant's fine. Okay, that's fine. So in here, get a live tenants. Okay. So if these creatures dot num is greater than 0, number of ants alive plus equals these creatures dot num. Else creatures alive equals false. If this creature I think here I'm probably going to have to cycle through. So it gets the looks at their stats. Okay. Yeah, basically here I'm going to have to cycle through all of these creatures. Although at the minute I don't really see why I've done this separately. I can just do this right here. So let's not bother jumping into there at the moment. Okay, so for auto, sorry chat, I say this is going to be very tricky because I'm trying to generalize something that's been very specific in the code for a long time. If this creature, no, oh. Okay, so it's going to cycle through all of these creatures, looking at this creature. We'll look up a name, and it's going to look up its stats. Totting up the carry capacity, whatever it was doing before. That's no longer needed. Right. Is creatures alive? Yeah, okay. So, all creatures alive currently represents is whether there's any creatures alive on that tile. Which isn't what it used to represent, so we've got to be careful with this. So let's go through this. So, same as above, but for the royals. Okay, so this is the royal chamber? What? Yeah, looks like it. It looks like here as well. Yeah, so it's doing the same as above. Right, okay, so looks to me like Creatures Alive is reset down here. I actually don't think it's needed anymore. Don't really know why it was there in the first place. So there's a number of ants alive, a number of ants. But it'll only do that if it can actually find the creature. So, in my opinion, number of ants alive here is the same as number of ants. Unless number of ants is meant to be just the maximum number of ants the tile can take. Which it might be. It might be. But according to this code, that won't actually happen unless the ants are live anyway. So if this code down here is the same as the above, it's just doing it for a different chamber. So it starts off with saying if there's a tenant, currently hasn't checked whether it's alive or dead, but if there's a tenant, it adds to number of ants alive. Interesting that. That might not actually work. and then sets this creature to equal something, else this creature equals default object of the class. Right. Okay. Is that what, that is probably what this used to do up here, but not anymore. So it does come into this section. Right. Okay, I might have to undo that, if that is what that used to do. Let's bring in, let's go back to the point where I moved this code. So this creature is literally meant to be default object. Okay. I'm going to redo everything that I've just undone because I don't want to lose all that work. Okay. So I can't do this here, unfortunately. I do have to do this. This does have to be flagged, and we do have to get a. So that's these creatures. So their example, right? So I'm using the words example creature there because it makes more sense, because it's not always the actual creature of the tile, and it's certainly not a specific one. So and then here we have a if example creature I need to look for the words this creature. Okay, there. See. Still not sure creatures alive is needed. Where's the below one? Use it. Creatures alive. Oh, I see. It's using it to determine whether it needs to look. Yeah, I see what it's used for. Spoiling us with all these streams. I'm trying to be more consistent with the streams. I'm trying to do two a week if I can. I'm definitely sticking to Thursdays, but I'm also trying to get an extra one in. Next week should be fine. The week after might be a little bit tricky. I might need to do some streams earlier in the week. It looks like I might have some issues with the frame rate on the stream, actually. Maybe my internet's not playing ball today. Anyway. Okay. So yeah. So I say this task that I'm on, like the very first reference to this of loads of them. Although I am covering multiple references here. But this task is going to be quite deep. It's probably not going to be finished on stream today. So don't expect to see anything but code today. Okay, so if creatures alive... So in this example, creatures alive is false. Okay, so here we've got an example creature. We use... Okay, so the for loop doesn't need to kick in just yet there. We can bring some of these out because the creature name, the looked up stats, all of that only needs to happen once. Doesn't need to happen for every creature because the tile can only produce one type of creature. Okay, so here's where the for loop needs to kick in. So here, with these creatures, we cycle through it. We add one to the creature count, to the ant count. We add one to the total. We add the total carry capacity in for each ant. Then if the creature's alive that we flagged earlier, we then look at see if the creature's in combat, and if it's... See, that's the thing. Oh no, all of these creatures will be alive. All of them will. So that's fine. No, but this isn't right. Ah, damn. Okay. Yeah. Okay, so again, I can't just look at the alive creatures here. Here we actually need to look at... In fact, this doesn't need to... The for loop doesn't need to be here. The for loop needs to be in... And even then, there's no reason for a for loop. Oh no, there is. Okay, so... Where's creature list come from? Okay, it's adding all creatures to a list of creatures. Phew. We're getting there. We're getting there. Okay, so here it's just adding number of ants. I actually think instead of adding number of ants, we need to look at the tile and look at the max number of ants. So the tile, I believe, is there. Okay, so we add on the max number of tenants there. Total carry capacity. It's the number of tenants multiplied by the food carry max. Then, if there's creatures alive, we add them to a number of in combat creatures and to a total list of creatures. Okay, I think that is done. Now we've got to do the same for this. And so this has to be really careful. So here we're cycling through all the royal chamber tiles. You know what, I'm gonna open a separate notepad file. I'm gonna copy what I did from above into this notepad file so I can pull bits out as I need them. Okay, So what have we got? So I started making changes here at tile function rep, and I changed it rather than, so there is a creatures alive bool. There isn't a this creature at this point. There is in fact a these creatures. This creature comes in later now. These creatures. But there is something called an example creature. Now, if tile function rep tenant, that changed to if these creatures.num is greater than 0. Then number of ants alive plus equals the number of creatures. There are some creatures alive, so that gets set to true. And then example creature gets set to these creatures 0. Else, example creature instead gets set to a default object. Then if example creature we come into here, we look up the name, we look up the stats. It's not this creature, it's example creature. Look at the stats. That all goes in there. Once we've done that, we tally up the number of ants and the food carry. And then if creatures alive, this is where we do the for loop for them. Looks like basically I've done exactly the same thing here as I've got for the above. Okay. Okay, so I think that's that. My guess then is that we've actually already removed all references to tenant in the data supplement. Yeah. Okay, so there's now no longer any references to tenant there, and we dealt with those situations carefully. So theoretically, it shouldn't be a problem. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to try and build it again just to make sure there's no errors. I think there's going to be an error because it reminds me of some error that I read before, which actually was an error to do with arrays, and it might require me to look up something about arrays, about these T arrays. I can sometimes get confused with them. Okay, so looking at the next stuff that tenant's mentioned in. It's mentioned in the job manager, but I've said this before, that as long as we deal with all the occasions where create brew job comes up, that's fine. Basically, has tenant is now referring to whether it has the maximum number of tenants rather than tenants themselves. So not going to worry about that one. Okay, looks like there might be two different spellings of tenants going on here. Just check that it hasn't actually come up. So that's tenant. Yeah. So looks like tenant, as in a tenant that is an ant, has been used in some places. Rather than a tenant. I don't think that's important there. It doesn't look like. Doesn't look like it interacts with anything. Oh, right. Okay. Tenent is the misspelling, and that's actually the lager. Oh, well, never mind. Just going to check through the 10 ants, which is technically the correct spelling. So before I look for tenant. So that's all to do with creating job, which is fine. Next, static climbable. Looks like with static climbables, they're known as tenants as well. So that's not actually important again. Okay, so this looks like it's going to be important. Wait for royal chamber. So, okay, so we're going to need to deal with this one. So in this situation, we've got a royal chamber being looked at. This is basically making a decision to hatch ants on in the royal chamber first. And this is the situation where you've got really little cash. It targets the royal chamber first to make sure you've got some workers to do something in the colony. It's for the situation essentially where you've had all your ants wiped out but you've survived. So you want workers first. Last royal chamber status. Okay. Looks to me like it's cycling through the royal chambers. Okay, so it looks like it's also got a limit on 7 ants. So once you've got 7 in your royal chamber, it doesn't care anymore. Royal Nursery Tenant. Okay, so does it have a tenant? Okay, so instead of tenant, we need to look at get alive tenants. So if get alive tenants is greater than 0, hang on, what did it say before? I need to check this out anyway, because I'm going to need to edit this. Okay. So this worries me a little bit, because what we've got here is it's checking that a tenant's valid or the tenant's in play, which doesn't really make sense. If the tenant's invalid here, this will crash. And because it's in OR, it'll do that, then that. Hang on, tenant's not valid. Tenant's not in play. Still think that could crash it. Oh, hang on. No, because it's not. Yeah. If it's not valid, that'll become true and it will go in. If it is valid, it checks whether it's in play. Right, okay. We don't actually need that. Basically, here, we're just going to get the alive ants. Does it have a tenant? We're going to get the alive ants. If it's equal to, if the alive ants is equal to 0, then it doesn't have a tenant. Okay, that should deal with that. Let me just check that's the actual function name, because I don't think at the minute. Yeah, that's right. It's the function name. So get a live tenant. So it doesn't have a tenant. This is not going to be an effective thing if there is no egg. One could potentially hatch from this tile. Therefore we skip this round and wait for it. Else, number of living ants. Sorry, I mean do that. So number of living ants is the number of tenants on the tile. Okay. That seems fine to me. Okay. So I think I've done UG tile. Don't care about static climbable. I've dealt with those situations. I don't think this is related. And that situation the job manager's dealt with. So now I need to look for tenants. Don't know where has came from there. Okay, so this is the first one I dealt with. That should all be replaced with the number of tenants, or yeah, that I've dealt with that one, so I'm not worried about it. Shared bot construction functions. It's amazing the amount of symbols it's trying to load. Annoyingly, it keeps bringing a box up in front of the middle of my screen. I just wish it'd do it off to the side. Load your symbols, it's fine. Just don't you have to constantly tell me about it. Okay, so again, we've got a temp creature here. Similar to this is incredibly similar to the one we've just fixed. Like, it's doing a lot. It's along the same lines, really. Right, I'm just going to get a coffee. Just to keep you informed, I'm going to end this stream at 2, so there's 20 more minutes left of the stream. So back in a minute. Oh, indeed. Okay, so here again, it's looking up a creature. Instead, we need to look up all the creatures. But I need to work out what it's actually doing with the creature. Wait for a minute. You've been counting? Yeah, my daughter's not very happy at the moment. You may catch glimpses of her crying in the background. She's with her grandma at the minute. Okay, so we have the temp nursery and the temp creature. So, oh, this is working out the danger mass as well. What function is this? It's get colony overview for Formicarium Lab 2 AI. That is a very specific function. But it does need to be looked at. So with the temp creature, checks it's in play. If it's in play, it adds to either the worker or the soldier totals. And the danger mass. Whew, doing all sorts of stuff. This is a complicated function, to be sure. So instead of all of this, have the temp nursery. So here, instead of this if statement, we have for auto temp creature temp nursery get alive tenants. Okay, so here it's instead of doing what it was before, we're now cycling through each individual tenant, and temp creature is being dealt with in that way. I haven't put that up. There we are. Okay, so it should be happier with that there. Does it do anything for dead creatures? Else? Yes, it does. So if this is the case that if the creature's not alive, I'm assuming in these ones it adds the total as well, yeah. And this, okay. Oh boy. Instead of an else, what we need here then is an if, actually. What the if is going to be so we've got the alive tenants there. Now underneath we do if give us a sec, just getting my head around this. We've got a temp nursery here. Oh, sorry. We need the total amount. So it's now of tenants minus the alive tenants will give us the dead tenants or the non-existent tenants, whatever you want to call them. Number of dead tenants is greater than 0. Then if it's a worker chamber, again, ghost of creature. That's a really it just means the default sub-object. Ghost of creature, for goodness sake. It's a pretty complex name. Yes. Danger mass. Soldier danger mass total. So that's dealing with the soldier danger mass alive. Here we're just adding up the danger mass total. So we multiply that by the dead tenants. I'm assuming soldier danger mass total is also dealt with here. Yeah, so that yeah, because in this one it runs it for every alive creature. However, in the one down here, we're not running it for every alive creature. We are in fact just running it once, multiplied by the number of them, which I possibly should do above actually. Or was the baby ant confused because all of his uncles were ants? Of course. You don't really get many ant uncles. I suppose you do in a way. Again, we multiply that by that. Coming back up to here, is there any reason why I need to run through this over and over again? So it gets the temp creature, it uses it for, oh, it checks whether it's falling. Interesting. Okay, in that case, if it's doing different checks on it, I'll leave it in place. Almost all tiles in the game only have one anyway. Shared bot construction functions. I need to check this out. 1 second. But I think I'm done with this one now. I fear the amount of stuff that's being changed here, you know. It's quite dramatic. Okay, this is referring to subtenants, so this is saving. This is going to be a whole new kettle of fish now. I'll deal with saving last because there might be other stuff that comes up. But indeed now for each tile, instead of just saving a tenant and a subtenant, we're going to need to save an array of tenants and a subtenant. It is going to be different. Again, that's part of the saving functionality. I think all of this is part of the saving functionality, to be honest with you. Saving or loading. Yeah. Okay, we'll come back to that. Again, that's part of saving and loading to do with climbing ants. Okay. This one is to do with ants leveling up. So, oh no, it's to do with unlocking abilities in the Formicarium. So you unlock an ability, it goes through all ants and makes sure the ones that exist have what they need to have the new ability. So basically here, this shouldn't be too hard, but I do need to check it out. And rather than doing that, what we actually do is you do a for loop through the tenants. And we just run this function called change creature level on it, on them all. Semicolon missing. Okay, again, this is going to be an important one. Where do ants go on their holidays? France. Brilliant ant puns. It's that time of day. All right. So I'm going to continue doing this. I've still got lots and lots of locations to go through, and once it's done here, I've then got to go into the blueprints and deal with it there, and then there'll be AI to deal with on the individual ants AI. When you change a system like this, it ripples through the whole game. Additionally, I've got to check that my changes actually work. So are they compiling? So I've got a lot to do this afternoon. But by the end of it, what we should have is the ability to spawn as many ants from a tile as we want. Maybe that'll have implications in the future. Maybe we can do some fun levels with that as well. But for now, that is going to end the stream. It's been entirely code today. So if you stuck with me through that, and we haven't even seen the results of it because there's still loads more to do. Well done to you. You clearly love your numbers and your variables. Look for me next week. Normal time, normal place. So I'm going to try and stick more rigidly to 11 a.m. starts on Thursday. Friday, I'll try and do a stream on Friday as well. So yeah, look for me then. Thanks for joining me, and I will see you next time. Ta-ra.